Hey, everybody, I'm back. Welcome to the episode 9 of the Heroes Edge Collectibles podcast. We're going to be going over DC back issues. Hold on. Back issues. We're going to be talking about some of the great crossovers that have happened in DC history, as well as just good DC books. I mean, we're going to make some honorable mentions of those as well. But thanks to everybody. Well, I didn't get to thank them too much for our guest last week. And Danny, good job on hosting.
Thank you.
For the Star Wars Episode 8. As usual, intros. I'm Blake Britton. To my right, as usual, Darren Kravanaugh. And host of last week, Danny Humphrey.
What's up, guys?
And the creative director of the team, Cameron Cavett.
I'm back.
Yeah, we're both back, man. It's good to be back. I mean, on the sidelines, it was kind of... I was off in the middle of no man's land. I felt like talking and being involved, but Star Wars is my thing. I like it, but I didn't read any of the books.
I kind of felt the judging eyes of Darkseid like glaring at me off to the side the whole time.
I could see it. I could see it.
That's all right.
It feels pretty good to sit in the judgment of others. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm used to being judged, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm used to being judgy.
Maybe you should have been over there then.
That's okay. I can judge just fine from the table.
Well,
both
either way, I'll
did
give you guys a
great.
9.1.5 out of 10
9.1.
and a half. There's a little extra there. So today's geek culture, led by Cameron Cavett as usual, is Daredevil Season 2. Take it away, Cameron.
Daredevil Season 2. Wow. When we were at C2E2 that weekend is when Daredevil Season 2 first came out. And every night that we were there, I was watching episodes in my room. And it was just phenomenal, blowing me away nonstop. The first season was really good, but it didn't make me marathon it constantly, like, you know, typical Netflix marathon where 8 hours later you're just like devoid of all life. But this one did, and it was well worth it. You have so many great factors into it. We've all seen every episode. What do you guys think of The Punisher?
I liked it. I really didn't. When I heard that Shane from Walking Dead was going to be the Punisher, I was like, really? But he did a good job. I really liked the character. I liked that. They changed some things up, but I liked it. It was a good origin.
Yeah. For me, that you were thinking was the first, like the initial concept. Really, you can kind of see it. But then I looked at a picture of him, and I'm like, he looks like the Punisher.
Yeah.
He looks like Frank in castle form. So. Seeing how good he did, and he even looks the role, and if you look at how he was as Shane in The Walking Dead, I mean, he even resembles that a hair there when he starts going a little bonkers. Mm-hmm. So you kind of see a little Frank Castle in Walking Dead already. So what do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I thought the portrayal was really good. I didn't get the real cinescope of it until there's a roof scene where he portrays directly from a comic where he puts Daredevil in a situation where he has to choose. He kind of puts Daredevil in his shoes. Mm-hmm. And just like season 1 directly following, there's I want to say like a 15-minute fight scene that happens from that roof scene all the way to the bottom of the building.
Oh, yeah.
And I was floored by it, really, really floored by it.
No pun intended.
There's a scene where he takes a guy with a chain and pulls him off the second story banister. Mm-hmm. And he just goes to town on this guy and pulls him through railings and right through the second story stairway. Yeah. So yeah, the fight choreography in the show is jaw dropping.
Yeah, throughout the whole show,
to say the least. Mm-hmm. But to focus more on the Punisher, I think the Punisher originally was a police officer or something in the beginning, but they gave him more of a military background in this one. Mm-hmm. Which he has military background, of course. I had heard Darren kind of talk briefly, before, saying that he's more humanized in this version, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. It makes the character less of a comic book character and more of a realistic role. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to agree with that on a full scale, because even looking at Matt Murdock being Daredevil, you see him get beat up and hit all the time. And a lot of the times in comic books, you'll see him. He'll obviously dodge most things because he'll hear it coming. There was just one part that I'm going to go against myself on what I just said, kind of contradicting. But when he was sitting there and he just took down, I forgot the guy's name, but he's like, he was talking to the woman on the stairs, on the cell phone, and she's like, "Is there anything around, like any flares to cauterize the wound?" And he's like, "Yeah, there's a toolbox and there's 2 flares in it." I'm like, Daredevil, you don't know that. How do you know that there's two flares in a metal box?
Radar sounds.
Well, yeah, but what if those were socket wrenches?
Which
too.
actually there's quite a lack of. Like you don't really see him using. You see him using blind techniques in the season.
For sure.
Where he is blind and he can hear things and stuff like that. But you don't directly see him using radar sense hardly at all.
No, he basically focuses on all of his other senses, like mentions that he can smell certain things like gunpowder, like very finite details. He can hear things from like miles away.
There is definitely more of a realistic hue to this story.
Yeah.
To these Netflix like these stories because they flushed out Frank quite a bit. They talked about his family, how they died, where they died, in what manner that they died in. And, it goes into full detail how the Punisher becomes the Punisher and why he is the way he is.
That 3rd episode was just like unbelievable. I never thought we'd see that live action before, like Garth Ennis's adaptation of that, and it's just such a great scene for conflicting ideologies. And that was his big moment to deliver the character and really make or break it. And I've seen that particular episode 3 times.
Yeah, but
because
that's
just so great to watch.
I feel that those are the best depictions of the Punisher as being that darker character. Sometimes you see him; he's always been kind of dark, but a lot of the times you'll see him in that real dark role, like you're saying, Garth Ennis.
With no moral background at all, like he'll just kill.
That's what I was getting at.
Regardless of what anybody else, including in front of him, thinks of him.
That's what I was getting at. My mind just wasn't working.
Yeah, but what I think I dig about the show so much is those multiple characters conflicting against each other. And I don't even mean just like Daredevil and Punisher. I mean Punisher and Kingpin. I mean,
that episode was amazing.
That was amazing.
Karen Page, like these different characters conflicting with each other. Like nobody thought, Karen Page and Punisher would like get along or like that would be the last person, you know what I mean? But seeing as like she had some inner information without going into too much detail, they were able to, work together and, those conflicting, characteristics really work well on screen together.
Yeah.
That was fun to watch. What was actually pretty uncomfortable to watch as far as character relationships and dynamics go is the separation of Matt and Foggy. That was kind of like, man, stop, guys. It's fucking sad. Cut it out. Be buds again. Go have a beer at that scummy place you guys like. Come on. But
well, the thing that actually helps the series and the story with is that it shows you how tough it actually would be to be a superhero in Hell's Kitchen while retaining and being a lawyer during the day.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's no way that you could be able to do that kind of thing. Like, battling, the Hand and ninjas at night while, defending, some piece of shit during the day in the courtroom. No way, man.
Or the trial of the century, the
even
Punisher
Daredevil
trial.
can't muscle up the fact that he's got to have to get up before noon after fighting the whole night with Elektra in the Hand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's too much. And they kept it real that way.
The one thing I really enjoyed is that they finally brought, something the first season for me was kind of lacking. He's called Daredevil for a reason. He's a little crazy. If you think about it, when Spider-Man does his web slinging and stuff like that, he's got the super strength to keep his arms attached to his body.
Yep.
Daredevil doesn't have that. He has super senses and then the radar sense. That's it. Yet he's jumping around, doing all this crazy acrobatic stuff all across Hell's Kitchen, and he loves it. And that's something that they brought out in this season. That Matt Murdock actually does enjoy it, and he kind of gets off on it. And they kind of showed him Elektra shows up and kind of is like, hey, remember when we used to do this stuff back in the day? And he's like, yeah, damn it, yeah. He kind of goes with it.
Yeah.
You know, he puts on that ultimatum like, nah, I'll help you this once and you go away.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, let's go beat up some more ninjas.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, first season was kind of tame.
Yeah.
In comparison.
And I enjoy seeing that when he goes into battle and he's got a smile on his face because he is that little bit of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Punisher and Elektra too were as like mesmerizing as Vincent D'Onofrio was as the Kingpin in that first season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the parts with Daredevil are like, oh wow, that's cool, they're doing it really good, but oh shit, who's that? You know, like what are they doing next? It's like when you went and see The Dark Knight and you get the Joker. Get the Heath Ledger Joker.
Yeah.
It's like Christian Bale Batman's great, but oh, what's the new bad guy doing? Or what's the new really interesting character doing? And that, like we mentioned briefly, the Kingpin and Punisher jail episode. Well, Punisher basically gets his own hallway fight scene, and it's brutal as hell.
Yeah. Yeah, he pretty much takes out everybody in the hallway.
Yeah.
But,
So-
you know, it's a nice 10-minute fight scene.
Yeah.
Feels like it anyway. It goes on forever.
And so many just classic things you'd expect from the Punisher, just like covered in blood at times, letting himself be tortured, you know, just brutal shit. You know, some of the scenes where he's just bruised, his face like is all broken and everything. It's like, how many times have you seen the Punisher in just a panel just like beat to shit, but he's still going on his next mission, like doesn't care.
Especially
like
Punisher
Daredevil
Max.
says, he's like, you're not the type of guy who takes breaks. You know,
Nice.
so good.
Yeah, good season 2. I hope it continues on. And I'm hoping to see Cajun Jones.
Oh, what Cage is, I believe, November,
September.
and then there is a second season of Jessica Jones. I think they're going to start filming it.
Well, yeah, but they're bringing Cage's own show. But they're all in Hell's Kitchen. Where are they?
He actually, I believe his show will not be in Hell's Kitchen because he did leave at the end of Jessica Jones.
Is he
So it's
going
going to be abroad.
Is he going to be going with Iron Fist?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Speaking of Iron Fist, the guy they cast is Loras Tyrell in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
The guy who plays that character.
Yeah. So that's going to be cool. All right. Well, you guys ready for some DC back issues? Back issues?
Yeah.
So let's think really quick though. I mean, I'm a Marvel guy, love Marvel. We all love Marvel. But what makes these DC ones so great and different than, you know, the Marvel events? Because we could talk about Marvel events, but we're talking about DC events. Why do we choose DC first?
When it comes to Marvel, Marvel has a tendency to be more based in science or a sort of science in a way. You have characters who are more like an everyman, like Spider-Man. Spider-Man's an everyman. He goes out, fights crime at night, comes home, has to pay like the rent, you know, opens up the fridge, like he's got some like couple day old like Chinese food in there and some milk that's gone bad. And then he's got to go to work in the morning. But you have these DC characters that are in some ways gods. I mean, look at Superman.
Yeah.
I mean, he can topple a city without blinking. I mean, Batman, for him just being a man and being as amazing as he is, I mean, that's smart and pushes himself that far. Wonder Woman literally is a demigod, you know? And you have these characters that fight things that are on god levels and events that span multiple realities and multiple, you know, it's on a different level.
So you think it's on a higher level than
In a
Marvel?
way. In a way.
Well, because I was just gonna combat you a little bit, but Batman's got a job. I mean, he gets up and runs, you know, Wayne Enterprises.
Actually, he really doesn't.
Oh no, he doesn't. That's a good point.
What I actually like about the DC crossovers
When you're rich, you
is
get a guy.
what I actually like
go
about the DC crossovers is when they address the other characters associated with these gods more closely, like the lesser known heroes, the side characters that are affiliated with Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Like they address those characters, things happen to them that bring those gods down to earth. Like, holy shit, man, maybe like we're not as tough as we think we are because of the people we're associated with are in this kind of peril or trouble.
For sure.
It kind of makes those characters like not as infallible as they thought they were. And it brings you down to that level where it's like, oh, okay, I can see now. I want to get on board now with these characters because, I mean, as much as Batman is a human, how many of us can identify with that character? You know what I mean? We don't have parents that have died. We haven't, studied ninjutsu like overseas and stuff like that. We haven't studied crime, to the upteenth degree and become the world's greatest detective. And we're definitely not like the Zeus god of all like superheroes.
Well, I was, but I relinquished the title last week.
What I'm saying is that like when it gets down to like the lesser known heroes and the heroes you can more identify with, that's to me is when it starts becoming more captivating.
Yeah.
And DC does do that well. It's just with Marvel, it's with their everyday heroes that you can identify with. With DC, it's their background and sub-heroes.
That's a good point.
You can deal with.
I would also like to mention what I like about DC events is that, DC in general, I'm starting to notice that every character seems to have their villain. Like we talked about this in the Batman episode way back when, how Joker is Batman's villain, or you got Sinestro's Lantern's villain, and kind of thinking about that, Marvel doesn't really do that. Like they do it to a degree, but not nearly as hard as DC does. And I think bringing that into this conversation is pretty important because DC events, I mean, you're going to be talking about a good one. I'll let you do that later. But that discussion will be on a later date. But
one of the things I like is every hero in DC, apart from Marvel, one of the things that distinguishes them is they all primarily have their own symbol. And their symbol represents who they are. They're held to those standards for the most part. Like the difference is if you could compare like Namor and Aquaman. Namor came out first, which is one of the things that's like one of the few that actually Marvel came out first with instead of DC. But when you look at Namor, he's first mutant, right? On record, first mutant, king of Atlantis. He's got so much going on. He's in the Illuminati. On any good day, he's good or bad. You got Aquaman, who when you see his symbol, he's the king. Like, that's what he's all about. He founded the Justice League, but like you said, he rules 70% of the planet. Like, to form the Justice League to protect the planet's in his best interests. Like, and when someone falls, if someone goes against their ideals that their symbol's known for, it's a much more, like, impactful moment. Because they're, like, forsaking their ideals completely.
Yeah. So
I'd agree. That's a good point. Like, the fact that all of the DC heroes do have their symbols, because that's true, they do, and I think that definitely one thing that separates DC, from Marvel is that Marvel has the ability to fluctuate out of that character for a little while. Like, let's say like Spider-Man, okay? He's able to like have symbiont Spider-Man. That Venom, the symbiote can take him over and he can pull away from the spider that's on his chest that we all know and love for a little while. And then come back to the Spider-Man we all know and love. Where in DC, that doesn't happen as much as you would, as it does in Marvel, I would say. They don't get pulled away from their symbols or ideals, like Camera said, as much as it does happen in Marvel. That's
a good point. Just like Red Skull with a lot of things. Cool. All right, so back to our back issues. So Danny, I hear you had a good run-in with Identity Crisis this week.
Yeah, actually Identity Crisis has been a favorite of mine for years since it came out. It was released in 2004, written by Brad Meltzer, drawn by Rag Morales. The art is spectacular in this book. To get to the forefront of, I would say, why I like it a lot is it really reminds me of a quintessential DC detective story. It starts out with a minor character or a couple of minor characters that normal DC readers wouldn't really know that much about. It starts out with Ralph Digby. He is known as the Elongated Man. And the Elongated Man, if you don't know who he is, he's basically Mr. Fantastic with detective skills. He's got like the skills and detective background, 20 years veteran of like Batman or The Question, but he has the elasticity of Plastic Man or Mr. Fantastic.
Wow. So, so he is a Ninja Richards.
It wouldn't even go that
Sherlock
far.
Holmes Richards.
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
So where Reed's
that would
tech,
be
he's,
more
on the case.
And basically, he can just stretch. That's really it. He can't like Plastic Man can I could take this form of like a giant rubbery car.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can just stretch.
And one of the things
All right.
like Danny's saying to support, even in the beginning of it, it's like, some stories don't start with the main characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of major DC stories, they grab you with something that happens with, a sub character, and this one's no different. It grabs you right in the beginning. Elongated Man, as usual, he's on a stakeout with a character by the name of Firehawk, which is basically green. She's a green hero. She doesn't have a lot of experience, and she's along for the ride. She's on a rooftop.
And I also believe she used to date Firestorm.
Okay.
I'm starting to think that Elongated Man would probably be a great detective.
He
could
is a 20-year
stretch up
veteran
skyscrapers,
detective.
couldn't he just take his head just
Pretty much.
up to where he needs to be and he can look in it? Who needs binoculars? at that
Under
point?
doors, I mean.
Yeah. Sneak under stuff. All right, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Basically, so they're on a case out, and she kind of like starts poking him about his past a little bit because he is married to a character by the name of Sue Digby. And who this character is think of this character as the Justice League's Lois Lane. Like in the Justice League satellite tower, Sue Digby kind of takes care of it. Kind of takes care of everybody there.
She's like a den mother.
Yeah, she's the den mother of the satellite. For years she's done this. She's extremely close to a lot of the Justice League members. She's extremely close to Wonder Woman. Well, basically, Firehawk is kind of wanting to know, like, hey, like, how did you meet Sue? Like, what's your story? And he kind of goes, whenever I'm at a stakeout with any guy, they never care to ask me about any of this stuff. But whenever I'm on a stakeout with any girl, like on the Justice League, all of them want to know how I met Sue and the story of how I met Sue. It's like nothing against women. I think it's sweet, but I just find it interesting that this is the story I always tell when I'm on, a stakeout with one of the women Justice League members.
Hold on, time out. I want you to tell this as if you were Elongated Man.
No.
I mean, I think
I don't have anything to equate this story to.
Not even the nose twitch.
Yeah, I can't even do that. So
I think it's a testament too to what kind of character she is, what she means to Justice League, that all the girls like idolize their relationship. Like, so how'd you meet?
yeah.
It's like it's the one of those that they all idealize.
And one of the coolest things I kind of thought about their relationship was he goes on to say that, they originally met in Central City at a ball, and when they first met, obviously crime went down at the ball, and here comes Elongated Man to like save the day. But also in Central City, as we all know, that's Flash's city. Mm-hmm. So Flash came in, saved the day as well, right along with Elongated Man. But Sue didn't, as this is Flash's heyday, Sue didn't pay one attention, not even an attention to Flash. She was all about Elongated Man. She was like, who's this? She had stars in her eyes for this character. And throughout the years, it goes on to say, like, she's met Batman. She's met Superman. She's met the brawniest, best, awesome superheroes in the entire world that you could fall in love with, any of these gods at any time. But she only ever had eyes for him.
Really?
Like, she was always in his lap. Like, he was her superhero. And it kind of goes on to say that. And that's why I think that when you were mentioning before, like, oh, this is why all the women inside the Justice League swoon over their relationship so much, because they love each other. And Firehawk even goes to say, like, well, what about Wonder Woman? And he's like, no, Sue's my Wonder Woman. Like, she's my lady, And it pulls you in, like, romantically. As a fanboy, you're like, geez, why am I being pulled in romantically by this silly little story?
Yeah.
So anyway, like, were you gonna say something?
Oh yeah, like you could tell they looked at her as equals, the women of the Justice League. They even said Sue's an honorary member, and
Yeah.
Lois Lane wasn't.
Yeah, didn't even get that honorary membership. So it kind of goes to show you how important, her role is to the Satellite and to the Justice League. And not a lot of people know about her, so I didn't know like too much about these guys when I first read this story.
Yeah.
I know who about Elongated Man, but I didn't know his name. I didn't know really about Sue or anything like that. So it was definitely like an informational like story as well.
For sure. Being an outsider DC guy, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I didn't know who she was. Now I'm interested in Sue.
Yeah,
Dickey.
so it
Her relationship with
basically, so they're on their stakeout, and it basically turns a corner where he kind of explains like, all right, so this is kind of something that she does for me on my birthday. It's not my birthday, but this is the reason why we're out right now, is because it's a couple months till my birthday. And every year on my birthday, Sue sets up this little mystery birthday thing for me. And the last time she did it, the Flash busted out of a cake. And, she gave me my present. And this year, it has something to do with Green Arrow. Green Arrow's, it's got something to do with Green Arrow.
Flash last year I bopped out of a cake.
I already know what it is and what's going down and what she got me, because, we were in the city a few weeks ago, and I was eyeing this antique magnifying glass that I saw. And just before we left the window, I seen her eye it too. So I already knew what she was going to get me. I already figured out the puzzle too. And she's like, so the puzzles, like after all these years, you already know like what she does. And, she's like, yeah, but I act like I don't. And she has the fun of springing the puzzle on me and my gift. It's sort of what we do for each other, and, so that's why I'm out tonight, to give her a chance to like, do this birthday thing for me. And basically at that point, it shows Sue in their house, and it shows her with the magnifying glass, and it shows it in a box. But what he doesn't know is that also with the magnifying glass is a pregnancy test that he has no idea about, and it's positive, like she's pregnant.
So he elongated his way into that one.
Yeah. Exactly. Shortly thereafter, she hears something, and she doesn't recognize what it is. Elongated Man's out, and obviously, doing what he's doing with Firehawk, and someone has broken into the home. And before you know it, she's being attacked.
Oh.
And as that happens, what they are on the top of the roof watching for, Elongated Man and Firehawk, goes down. They're watching a box.
Yeah.
And it's supposedly, they don't know what's in the box, but the person that's coming for the box shows up. So they jump off the roof to go like figure out what's going on. And Sue, like, I think he has an earpiece, right? Mm-hmm. He has an earpiece. And Sue calls Ralph, and she's like, Ralph, someone's in the house. I'm really scared. I don't know what to do. And he's like, Sue, what's going on? While he's like fighting in the alley, with like the box that they're trying to like find out what's going on or what's in.
Yeah.
He's there. He can hear over the earpiece that she's getting attacked, and basically like he says Ralph like for the last time, and he screams Sue, and she goes down. And then you see like the barrel of this torch like go off, and he tries to get there. Like he's like, I gotta go. And he gets there as fast as he possibly can. And he shows up. The sprinklers are going off in the house.
For sure.
And and on 40% of her body, she's burned. And like he comes over, he scoops her up, and like he's losing it. So the elasticity of his body is like all over the place.
Oh, jeez.
And he's holding her body.
Yeah.
And the sprinklers are going off. And it shows the box with the magnifying glass right at the bottom. And it shows that it's positive and that she's pregnant. And you'll throw up that picture for you because I kind of want you to see what that picture looks like. But when I first saw that, I was sucked in. I was like, whoa, what is going on? And it goes on from there. They have the funeral scene.
Which, dude, that's a hell of a way to end that first issue. You got that for me for Christmas, and I read that like a month ago. And the first issue, it's just like, what did I just see?
Yeah, the thing is it's like it's cut in half, so you're stuck on that page, and you're like, whoa, this is crazy. And you turn the page, and you still got like 5-6 more pages left.
Yeah.
Of that book, and you're like, man, I can't believe I'm marching through the funeral of a major DC character. In this first book.
Yeah,
you know, but that's what happens because Sue is so close to Wonder Woman. She ends up giving the eulogy. Everyone expected Superman, but Wonder Woman gives it. And then they expect words from Ralph, and Ralph can't even hold it together at the podium. Like he's all over the place, and
like literally can't even hold form.
Yeah, he can't even hold form.
Like he's like melting.
And and they eventually get pulled aside. Right after and before the funeral, I should say, the Justice League have had to deal with some death in the past. So they have a contingency plan for when this stuff goes down. All Justice League were alerted. When Green Arrow got to the door, he even says like some people get to the scene and are alerted before others. And Ralph and Batman had already swept through the entire house to look for clues as to what happened. And Bruce said that he had not left a thread of carpet untouched. And when Green Arrow gets there, he's like, you know, I love Bruce to death. He's an absolute marvel at what he does. But the one thing about Bruce is at the end of the day, when all is said and done, he's still human. And Bruce leaves a sign on the door, and it says, "Crime scene done, results soon, don't touch anything." Yeah. And it has a bat symbol on the door. And, you know, Green Arrow has that inner monologue, and he opens the door. And when he goes in, you see behind him is Mr. Miracle, is the point man.
Scot-free, the escape artist master.
Yeah, he's the world's greatest escape artist. And when I say worlds, I mean 3 worlds.
Yeah. Because he's a new god.
Because to elaborate on, too, why they're all going so thorough, not just because but because you shouldn't have been able to break in there.
Yeah.
They had like all kinds of technology. The Justice League collaborated on a foolproof security system that they use for their own quarters and the people they love. So I think...
Yeah, it shouldn't have been done.
Yeah.
So basically, Miracle Man, like think of him as like Houdini with like mother box technology that can break out of anything. So he's the point man. Following him is the Atom, who literally checks every single carpet strand.
And he can get small enough to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
The Ray does spectrum analysis. Magnus's toys do metallurgy. So anything metal in the air, like, or anything metal anywhere, he can decipher and pull out. Metamorpho comes later for anything that they can't identify. And then they even brought in Animal Man to grab scent. So they go over this like apartment ridiculously, and they can't find anything. So after the funeral, because it was done with a torch and the fire went over 40% of her body, they're thinking people with heat wave, anybody like, so a bunch of the Justice League go that direction. Then they thought, well, to get past the defenses, it's got to be a teleporter. They go in that direction with a bunch of like villains. These are the ones that are caught right now. These are ones that are large. Find them.
Yeah.
So the Justice League disbands to find all these. Well, 5 members stay behind. And they meet up in the back chapel of the church. And the 5 members are Black Canary, Hawkman, Green Arrow, believe the Atom, right? Is the Atom part of it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Zatanna.
And Zatanna. And are we missing anyone? Is there?
Hawkman, Green Arrow, Atom, Zatanna, Elongated Man.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Oh, Wally.
Well,
No,
it's not Wally. There would have been a 6th member, and it was Barry, but Barry's dead.
That's right.
And they get together, and Elongated Man's like, listen, we know what happened all these years ago. We know who it is. We know who attacked my wife and killed her in her home. He's like, let's go get him. It's all these people are off fighting, but we know who it is. And this is bullshit. I want him now. I want Dr. Light. And it shows like, he's really pissed, and he's like, get Dr. Light now. So that's like the end of the first issue.
Wow. That was all one book.
That was one book. And the one book sets it up for the entire series. I'm not going to flesh out the entire series because I want readers to check this out. I want you to go in not knowing the way I went in not knowing. But I will just give you a synopsis of a few things that happen.
Well, just based on that one book, I'm captivated. I'm glad I didn't read it.
Yeah. Basically, what ends up happening is it goes into what Dr. Light did all those years ago. And I'm just going to say, like, throughout the years of reading Marvel and DC Comics, it's one of the most horrific things that has ever happened to a character. It's pretty rough. Mm-hmm. These 5 Justice League members got together, and they've decided to morally put their heroic ideals aside and make a decision as a result of what Dr. Light did to do something that's pretty questionable amongst superheroes.
Arguably immoral.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it goes on through that, and they don't stop there. They do it multiple times. I guess I can go on to say it a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. They wipe Dr. Light's mind.
All right.
And they don't stop there with supervillains that they've faced in the past.
It's like, hey, Clark, I'll see you later. And they're like, yeah, Clark, I guess we'll see you later. DC touches on that. Like, they're not going to forget if they hear you mention that your street name, around. So they would wait till people would go away and like, all right, bring Zatanna in. Wipe the mind. They don't forget Clark Kent. She'd say it backwards. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they all agree. And because all of them had lost family at that particular point, at that time, Barry had just lost, his wife. So he was the 6th deciding member on whether they should do it. And they did. They not only wiped his mind, but they eschewed it. Like they tampered with, his mind. And from that point forward, any person who had made like such crazy threats to the Justice League, they did the same thing to. Mm-hmm. And so it deals with that. Wally and Kyle find out, who was the Green Lantern at the time. Mm-hmm. They didn't know that Wally was there at first because he was like in place, moving so fast that he was making himself invisible. But Hawkman like saw him, like he could see Speed moving that fast, mm-hmm. And he's like, I know you're there. Come out. And like Wally came out and he's like, what do you think that all the Justice League noticed that just you 5 weren't like on the scene chasing people and that you guys were missing? I wanted to find out what was going on, and they end up like having to let him in because he's like, hey, you can tell me, or I can just go get Big Blue and Bats and we'll all sit here and figure it out together. And they're like, fine. So they let him in on what happened, and they let him in on what Barry had decided all those years ago. And they're like adamantly against what they've done. They're pretty harshly judging, but when your family's on the line and there's people dying, there's nothing that you wouldn't do for your family. So basically the series goes on and it continues to be a pretty heavy detective story to find out who killed Sue. It ends up not being Dr. Light. So with that information, I can give that away.
Yeah.
And it still holds part for you guys to be able to read and find out that this story it goes on for 7 issues, and each and every issue is a nail biter.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the 3rd issue, Dr. Light hires Deathstroke the Terminator just to keep him alive because all of the Justice League want to take him out and mess his world up. So Deathstroke ends up coming in large, and he ends up taking down almost the whole Justice League by himself.
Yeah, we detailed that fight in our top 10 villains DC podcast. Go watch that, guys. Plugging our own stuff.
Right. Plugging our own body.
But one of the things along the lines with the whole like identity crisis, and people are thinking like upon hearing this, like, oh, how well can you keep a secret from Big Blue, who can hear Lois Lane's heartbeat across the planet? Well, they even address that. Superman can hear pretty much whatever he wants whenever he wants. So when they have these conversations, it's assumed like he probably knows these things. Mm-hmm. Just like Batman's the world's greatest detective. He's probably figured this out by now. But there's certain things that you have to keep to yourself to really protect the world.
Yeah, there's certain things that they say that basically Superman can hear everything, but whether he chooses to acknowledge what he hears is another thing altogether.
Yeah.
I imagine he's got to pass up a lot of things.
Yeah.
Nice. So I'm glad I have most of it. I think I'm going to pick it up soon.
Yeah, I don't want to give away anything else because there's just too many hardcore reveals.
Oh, yeah.
And look, I mean, if I were to give away anything, I feel like you guys wouldn't even be able to enjoy the story.
Yeah.
So
it's a detective story at heart.
Yeah, it definitely is, which that's what DC is named after.
Detective Comics. Detective Comics. Yep. I like it.
And honestly, like I said, I have collected Flash and Batman through the years, but this book was this story was the story that captivated me to the level to where I started collecting DC Comics much further than just those 2 titles.
So this was your favorite event of all time for DC?
I would have to say, yeah, it's the one that grabbed me the most.
It was pretty heavy from it sounds like.
Yeah.
Nice. I read that late, and like I said, you got that for me for Christmas. I read that late in my comic reading career, and I was just like, wow, it's hard to think of anything that's like it in any way.
Yeah, it came out 12 years ago. It's a more modern day story, but it's one that to me will stand the test of time, at least.
But it's still in the back issues.
Yeah, for sure.
So if there were 1 million DC crossover events, what would yours be, Darren?
It would be DC 1 million.
Oh, who would have thought that?
Million variant covers.
Million variant covers.
That's more likely.
Yeah. So take it away. What's DC 1 million about?
DC 1 million's premise was what year would it be if Action Comics and Detective Comics reached the number 1 million? And that would be in the 853rd century.
I really hope comics get that far.
So do I. The story was written by Grant Morrison, who at the time was writing JLA. Now, a little bit of backstory. It's probably my favorite JLA series. He brought back, which at the time, you had a lot of the crap JLAs, like the one that fought Doomsday, which was like Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, and Ice and Fire. You had all these like B and C level characters on the Justice League. Martian Manhunter was really the only one from the Big Seven who like hung around for every version or incarnation of the League. When Grant Morrison jumped on the book, he brought back the original 7. Well, not the original 7, the Big 7. Wally West was the Flash at the time. Kyle Rayner was the Green Lantern at the time. But you had Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Green Lantern, Flash, Aquaman, and Martian Manhunter.
So when you say brought him back, because I actually haven't read DC 1 million, did it take place in JLA or was it its own event book?
It did take place in JLA, but it was an event book. Okay. Each title had stopped at the time to do a 1 million issue.
Okay. Like
and
a one
so
shot?
you would see
Like a one shot?
Yeah, you would see like Catwoman 1 million was that Catwoman from the 853rd century.
Nice, that's cool.
Now like the Batman titles and the Superman titles, they kind of flip back and forth between like what's going on in the present and what's going on in the future.
Okay.
But the general premise of the story is it actually first takes place in the Justice League issues. The Justice League from the 853rd century show up. They're called Justice Legion A. And you have Superman from the Superman dynasty. There are many Supermen now. We're talking Superman from like the 5th dimension, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Like his people like have a Superman. There's Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Starman, who is a very lesser known character from the JSA, which are like the Golden Age fighters, the ones from World War II. He had a quantum rod. Haha, yeah, quantum rod.
I wasn't even going to go there on that one.
Most people generally do, so I just beat you to the punch. But you have Starman, and then you have Hourman, who is an android.
I like Hourman.
Yeah. So basically they show up, and our Justice League is like, hey, who are these guys? Like, we've had some security issues. We better check them out. And basically the Justice Legion says, hey, we are from the far future. You're the first. We want to invite you to the future because Superman, the prime Superman, is going to make his appearance after like 15,000 years in his Fortress of Solitude in the Sun. And basically, we want you to come and celebrate the event. Because why not have the first Justice League there when the first Superman shows back up? Now, Superman's a little dumbfounded. He's like, you're telling me I lived that long? Like, yeah.
He is kind of a god.
Like, Kyle Rayner being like one of the greenest members of the team is like, oh, I totally want to go. This sounds great. Yeah. And Wally West wants to go. And basically all the league's up for it except for Batman.
Sounds about right.
Who is basically like, I have matters of my own to attend to.
Good bet. Good
bet. To which the Batman from the, as everyone else is talking about it, Batman's kind of gone off on his own. And the Batman from that timeline, or from the future, shows up, and he's like, yeah, I kind of figured you wouldn't want to go. And he ends up attacking.
Killington.
Right? Sounds like Bruce.
The Batman of the future outright attacks Batman. He attacks him with like a psychic martial art that he learned from some octopus race from this planet, whatever.
So he convinced him to go?
He knocked him out.
Oh.
And then took his spirit from his body and then sent it to the future with the rest of the league.
That's awesome.
So the league go and take off to the future. Martian Manhunter is the only one that stays behind, just in case anything happens. Because you have like the second stringer leagues like Steel, Big Barda, who's married to Mr. Miracle that we brought up in the last crossover. There was an angel by the name of Zariel, not exactly sure how to pronounce his name. He was kind of like the wannabe Hawkman. And then Huntress, and they're all sticking around. You know, they're the B Squad. Martian's gonna stick around. Well, as the league leaves, all of a sudden, Hourman just starts freaking out. And he starts, he's an android, like 11001110, and everyone's kind of like, what's going on? And then basically a nuke detonates from where they're at.
Oh.
Well, go a little bit earlier, we have our good friend Vandal Savage, the immortal from caveman days, has spent a good amount of money to buy a couple of old Rocket Red suits. Now, Rocket Red suits are kind of like the DC version of Iron Man if they sucked. And they mass produced all these suits, and the kind of running joke back in those days was that the Rocket Reds would show up, they die off, no problem. Like a couple were on the league, but they always got killed.
Star Trek red shirts.
Yeah, kind of.
It's almost like the Rocket Core.
Kind of.
Cool.
Bringing on an old joke we pulled off.
Yeah. And so basically, he got these Rocket Red suits, and the Titans, who were trying to be put back together by Arsenal at the time, who is also Red Arrow now, attacked him, got totally whooped. And he took them all and put them inside the suits, and each one had a nuke attached to it. And he was going to fire it at different cities because he wants to rule the world, and he's just going to take out America and like England and stuff like that and make it easier for him to take over.
He's a savage.
So
Fan
that
base.
nuke goes off. That nuke goes off, and basically the League survives it, of course, because they're the League. But our man, when he was freaking out,
Did Martian Manhunter come through with the save?
he did. Well, there was the explosion. I mean, basically people died.
Some of them died.
And the crazy thing is, and this is how awesome the Martian Manhunter is, his vulnerability is a fire.
yeah.
It doesn't hurt him. It's more of a mental thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he sat in the fire and was like saving people.
Wow.
And he didn't leave. And that was something that as the rest of the superheroes of the world show up, Blue Beetle, who's kind of a joke character, but he's sitting there and he's remarking about this. A Martian is just walking back in and bringing people out. The ones that are still alive, because he's like fires
Makes
totally
me
his
think
kryptonite.
you remember Fight Club where Edward Norton's finding his happy place in
Yeah.
the therapy. Manhunter's probably thinking mountains of Oreos
Right?
in the fire, my happy
Exactly.
spot.
But when our man was freaking out before everything happened, he had ended up setting upon the world a plague called the Iron Man or the Our Man virus.
Iron Man virus.
And,
Not a true virus.
but no, Our Man. But and this virus gets inside your brain and basically eats away at the part that makes you like your emotions and stuff like that. It makes everyone on edge.
And those other future Justice League were backing him up, like they condoned it all.
They were like, what are you doing? They didn't even know what was going on.
wow.
But the world kind of thought they were. And once that virus got spread everywhere, everyone was all on edge and were like, yeah, these guys are evil and stuff like that. Even though they proved themselves by saving those Titan members who were in the other Rocket Reds. Well, so everyone's kind of freaking out. The League on their watchtower, the B team is kind of safe. They weren't on Earth. They're like, what's going on? The League's not here. We got to get them back, but they're stuck in the future. Maybe something happened to them. Well, we get to the future, and all the League are basically at the different worlds that the Justice Legion protect. The Flash is Mercury, the Batman protects Pluto, the prison planet,
Nice.
like stuff like that. And they're all there to do kind of like a challenge to show what made them so great in their time. But instead of the challenge being kind of like simple and not at all life-threatening, they're all being targeted.
Okay.
Something's going on. And basically the thing that's doing it is this tyrant sun. It's a sentient creature, like an android of some kind, and it's a sun. It's called Solaris. And it's teamed up with Vandal Savage. Again, an immortal.
Yeah.
He's lived all this time. And the premise of the story is that Solaris wants to assassinate the Prime Superman because he is the enemy of the Superman dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
And he figures that he's going to find this thing called the Night Fragment, which is a piece of kryptonite, and fire it like a bullet into the sun and assassinate him. And I'm not going to get too much into the story, but it encompassed the entire DC universe. And what makes it great, in my opinion, is that it's kind of showing like how the League started and then what they became because of what they started. Like you have Batman who like totally just runs this prison planet, and it goes into like the depths of his psychosis and what made him Batman, but also goes into what makes all the other Batman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the tragedy
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
So how tragic was his life then?
Oh,
Versus
pretty bad.
Was it a Wayne? Was it a descendant of Bruce Wayne that was Batman?
No, he
in the
wasn't a
future?
descendant.
Okay.
He was just another man who
The Bat.
basically suffered a tragedy and then became Batman.
Oh, so this wasn't Bruce.
No. No, Bruce has been long dead.
That's what I would assume.
He's
But
human as fuck, dude.
yeah, no, I understand that. But if you think of Bruce Wayne's money and intellect, I would imagine that he would be able to pull something
really
together.
mortal.
Like Fountain of Youth.
Super mortal.
Nope, they didn't bring in the Scott Snyder thing where it's like, you know,
His
you have a clone.
consciousness.
Yeah.
He's just, you know, he's just another man, but he's got tech on his side. And the way I kind of explain him is he's kind of like Batman mixed with Doctor Who, where he is one step ahead of everybody. He's not an ass, though. You know how Bruce is kind of a dick to everybody? A little bit?
Yeah.
He's not. He's actually kind of a nice guy. Granted, he outright attacked Bruce, but he's like, you have to go, and I know how you're going to act. We can't have that. And just totally took him out of the equation so that he'd go.
Yeah.
But he's actually kind of a nice guy, and when everyone is scrambling to protect the city from this Hourman virus, he kind of goes out there and he, like, tests Nightwing a little bit. And he's like, oh, you're Nightwing. He's like, I've read the the old data about you, and stuff like that. And he's kind of marveling at it. And he goes and meets Alfred and Commissioner Gordon, and as they're trying to figure out a cure for the plague that's going on, he finds the Bat computer. He's like, oh, this is a little slow, and he takes out his little like sonic device or whatever and makes like all these other computer banks just so that it can power this computer. So it's like, oh, well, it's not up to my standards, but something maybe more for the 27th century. So hopefully it'll help. But it was just a great story that you saw, like, the League of Old and the League of New.
That's awesome.
Like, the Superman from the far future is so vastly more powerful than our Superman. I mean, he's like, yeah, I have 5 extra senses because, like, a Superman from, like, the whatever century ended up marrying the Superman from, like, or the super person, whatever, from the from a fifth dimension. So we ended up, like, getting some of their powers.
That's awesome. What other senses could you bring up?
One of them,
our main 5, like
one of them was like a
The Sixth Sense, Bruce Willis.
not so much, but it ended up being
See
like
dead people.
it ended up being like a sort of vision that would allow him to create like a force wall,
Okay.
like stuff like that. It was just
That's
kind of
pretty
it was just kind of out there, but something that the League of New stuck in the present time kept saying was like, well, if Solaris is doing this, our league are not going to be able to stop them. Like they're just not up to the task.
Mm-hmm.
But they proved them wrong, and that's what's so great about the story is you see guys like Kyle Rayner, who's this like everyman Green Lantern, the last of the Green Lanterns, you know, totally kicking all this butt, and basically is the one that ends up, you know, being the kind of the true hero of the story.
hence the lantern.
But yeah, it's just a really great story, and seeing like the evolution of some characters or how their characters would be perceived that far ahead.
So this is out of all DC crossovers, your favorite?
Yep.
It is pretty cool to see now and what could potentially be, though. That's
and it's
pretty
kind of
exciting.
like it's on the level of kind of wackiness, like the time travel possibilities. There's a story that deals with the Martian Manhunter because again, he doesn't go to the future, and it deals. I mean, who knows how long Martians are, how long they live?
Mm-hmm.
But in the story, he's basically outliving everybody, and at some point, you know, Superman disappears, Batman dies, the League is gone, but he's always the quintessential key of the League. He always rebuilds it. He always reforms it. And it shows him over time, like rebuilding the League and stuff like that.
Oh, so you see that throughout the whole thing?
Yeah, because in his book, you see him like, yeah, this is what I did. He's telling this story. And it ends up coming down between him and Darkseid. And the two of them fight. And the fight just goes on forever. And in the end, they end up getting sucked in by the Source Wall. Mm-hmm. Which, if a lot of people don't know, the Source Wall is kind of like
the end of the universe.
Pretty much. And there's a bunch of old gods just locked into it. And they get sucked into it, and they are greeted by the Source. Now, in DC, the Source is kind of like God. Mm-hmm. And the Source says to Darkseid, you've been around too long. Like, you need to go away with the others, because the other new gods have already left. Mm-hmm. So, time for you to go. And sends him away. And then looks to Martian and is like, what do you want? Your time isn't done. And the choice he makes is rather interesting. He ends up becoming Mars. the planet Mars.
Nice.
Why would you just want to be a planet?
It's his home world. He wants to be a part of it. So he becomes the planet. And
does he have a nice face on there too?
No, he's just
like the cheese moon.
He's
the yellow
just essentially he's kind of like Mogo. He's essentially planet.
Yeah.
And whenever he wants to like talk to someone, he just becomes like the sand becomes him.
Interesting.
And like we'll talk to him and stuff like that. But it was cool to see a character like that just evolve to that point where I'm a planet now.
Yeah. So that's pretty crazy.
You know what would be awesome is if Superman actually didn't get those extra senses. It was just all that time in the sun, like really messed with his brain. He's like, hey guys, I got some new powers. Like, wow, he really fell from grace.
He's lost it completely.
A lot of those wacky things are stuff you get with Grant Morrison books.
Yeah.
Just kind of out there stuff. And it's what I like. When he writes Marvel stuff, I'm usually not into it. But when he writes DC stuff, it's kind of out there. And he takes stuff from the past and kind of makes it new. But it's
All of his
kinda
Batman
crazy.
stuff.
Like R.A.P.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But I mean, what's great about the book is it also leads into probably my favorite Superman story called All-Star Superman.
Yep. Also, Superman's
Yes.
really good.
And that actually kind of deals with how Superman ends up going into the sun in the first place. But it's just great seeing all these like legends come together and just like crazy time caper. And then how plans started in, at the time, the 20th century end up coming to fruition in the 853rd century due to a couple of immortals.
That's awesome.
Like a character by the name of Resurrection Man. A lot of people aren't going to remember that guy.
Res Man.
I mean, basically, he's like, oh, I die. I come back to life and I have a power.
Yeah.
Oh, I die again. I come back to life. I have another power. That was the guy. And
He got his exact same powers from the same way that Vandal Savage did.
And in the far future, he has this device on his arm that he can like, all right, I need to fly. Hits in like flight, hits a button, the thing kills him in a nanosecond, and then he's back. Like it's just like it's kind of like a shutter. Like I just died, and then he can fly. Oh, I need super strength now. Punches it in, hits the button.
So hold on. So I'm pretty unfamiliar with Res Man. So does he come back with a different one, or does he keep the ones that he's punched in?
He comes back with a different one.
Yeah,
all
it's a
right,
different
yeah.
power every time he comes back.
When in his first book, he didn't have that. He just ran around and was solving mysteries and then get killed and then come back with the power. He had no control over what power he'd get either. But in this far future, he has a device that's just like, get that power. And it's interesting seeing him and Vandal Savage go at it. These two immortals who've been around,
That's awesome.
for the longest time.
That's pretty awesome. All right. So we've gone over Identity Crisis, gone over the 1 million variants. 1 million. But now we have to talk about Mark Waid and Alex Ross's greatest, in my opinion, Kingdom Come. Cam, go.
Well, Kingdom Come is a fantastic book. As Blake said, Mark Waid, Alex Ross. Alex Ross art's phenomenal. At the beginning of the book, it's dedicated to Christopher Reeves, which, as we all know, played Superman and was, like one of the most iconic Superman, if not the most live action version we've seen. I think it's pretty neat. The way Alex Ross draws Superman is amazing. It's all of his artwork is just phenomenal. Each panel you have to just take time to look at and just study it. Me and Darren have talked about off camera before. There's a phenomenal amount of characters that they've hidden in that book. In the one bar scene, you can even see like Rorschach and the Question hanging out.
Rorschach, Swamp Thing.
Yeah, it's just loaded with like cameo characters for tributes and stuff like that. But anyway, the book takes place about 10 years in the future from like current time. And the main heavy themes of this are old school versus new school, killing versus not killing as a superhero, and then you got humans versus superpowered beings. You got the setting of things is this new school of heroes have come in, and all the old ones that we knew and followed are pretty much gone except for a few. You see, the Flash is still in his city, and he's become so fast that his city's a utopia now because he can literally be everywhere at once. You have Hawkman, who took over the North Pacific, and he just like rules that, flying the skies.
Hawk God, I believe is the name.
Yeah, and and then Green Lantern is up floating around space, waiting for cosmic battles, and he's got his own Emerald City, which he's made, and just stays there. You have Batman, who's now got an army of bat robots who's policing Gotham, and he's got his city under complete control, basically.
And he looks pretty old in this one.
He does. He's older. They've all aged quite a bit. Superman even looking a bit older.
Yeah, he's got
rocking
those
the
gray hairs going
Yeah,
on.
it's so cool. And I like his costume in this, the black and red S.
Mm-hmm.
But the story starts off with the death of the Sandman, and he's been having apocalyptic visions about the end of times. And there's this pastor who was there with him during his last moments, pretty much, and was at his funeral. And he gets visited by the Spectre, which is an angel of vengeance. And he's telling him, you need to witness these events and tell me who I judge. And they start watching these events unfold, and basically find out that back when superheroes were superheroing and still doing the classic superhero code tight stuff that we like, there was the topic of, should we be killing some of these villains? And one of the most discussed is the Joker. Everyone always says if Batman just killed the Joker, it'd be done. Well, the Joker went to Metropolis and he attacked the Daily Planet, killing 80 something people and one woman, Lois Lane. Mm-hmm. And everyone thought Superman was going to snap, but this newfound hero, Magog, came over and he actually killed the Joker. And it spawned a new era where they put him on trial and they just acquitted him right away. And people want their heroes to kill the bad guys. They want their heroes to be not your father's heroes anymore. And a lot of the heroes just left. They went off and did their own thing. The gods, as they say, the godlike ones among them, went back to where they came from, basically, and just started worrying about their own stuff. Aquaman retreated to Atlantis. Mm-hmm. And ruled his kingdom. As he says, he's like, I got 70% of the world. You have no idea what I do constantly. I'm done with the surface. And
Kent went back to the farm.
Yeah, Superman's back on the farm, and he gets visited from Wonder Woman from time to time, and abandoned the name Clark as well. He goes by his Kryptonian name now, because it seems like ever since his parents died, that part of him died as well. And he eventually gets talked back into donning the outfit again, the tights again, because these new superheroes are just killing people recklessly. They're fighting each other mostly. Some of them blew up Arkham, it's mentioned, and Blackgate, cutting down Gotham's crime exponentially. And so you got this era of heroes killing the bad guys and fighting each other, and not caring about the collateral damage, and people are starting to turn on them and they don't feel safe anymore. So Superman shows up in a really pivotal scene just out of nowhere and just saves the day, and everyone is reminded again what true heroes are. Mm-hmm.
But there was a big part of this this book that a lot of the heroes were hesitant. Mm-hmm. Superman refused actually to come back for a really long time.
He would not. Wonder Woman.
And Wonder Woman had him go to the Fortress Solitude and look at what was going on. And the event that sparked his return was this character, Magog, who we mentioned killed the Joker. He led a team of very powerful people to take on the Parasite. And as Superman puts it, a villain who's really not that powerful that takes 9 ultra powerful beings to take on. And when they went to fight him, he kept pleading and saying, I'm confused, I'm lost, please just restrain me, I'm turning myself in. And they're like, screw you, dude. Keep attacking him. And he grabs Captain Atom and breaks his suit open, causes a nuke, and they blow up pretty much all of Kansas.
That always happens at Captain Atom.
I know.
It explodes.
I mean, seriously, that always happens.
Yeah, pretty much. It happened in the Unlimited show, too.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Should call him Resurrection Man, because they just put his stuff, stuffing back together and sew him up. But yeah, that's how reckless they're being. And Superman at this point, he's older and he's about as strong as he's ever been. And when he shows up and saves the day, it's so cool. You just see the red blur, and then him standing there, villains already defeated, everything's saved, and it's just that's Superman, And then it sparks all the other Justice League to come out, and they start doing hero things again. And one of the things they start doing is going after these new breed of heroes, and they're like, hey, look, you're either gonna start getting some training and calm down and do real hero things, or we're going to throw you in jail. So they start throwing a ton of these like heroes in jail who, you know, they're saying this guy had, you know, villains subdued and they're surrendering and he killed them anyway. You know, all these different things. And meanwhile, you have the whole man versus God side of this thing with the Mankind Liberation Front headed by Luther. Vandal Savage is there as well.
The Riddler.
Yeah,
Catwoman.
The Riddler, Catwoman.
And the soon to be talked
the
to
King.
Batman.
King from the Royal
yep.
Flush Gang.
I've been, what would now be considered Damian,
Damian,
but
yeah.
his name in there is Ibn
Al
Fayed.
Safash or something.
I don't know
Ibn Al
exactly how to
Safash.
pronounce it, but in Arabic it means son of the bat.
Yeah, which is pretty cool because they, you know, they talk about the dynamic a little like more in depth later on in the book. I don't want to like, you know, specifically put his involvement, but he's like deeper than what it is. But he's in the Mankind Liberation Front, and it's basically this group Luther's put together to be the humans' representatives in this whole conflict, because their side of it is, yeah, you know, we have these reckless new heroes watching out for us, and the old ones want to come back and kind of guide their hand. But at the end of the day, it's our planet. We should be defending ourselves. We should be able to handle our own problems. And you see Batman eventually joins them with Green Arrow and Black Canary. And it goes a little bit deeper than that. I don't want to give out any more of the intricacies of that dynamic, but seeing Batman and Luther working together is worth picking it up
crazy.
for itself.
All I want to say is like, you know, it's an insanely like enthralling story that you fall into. But the reason I really fell into it is because every single panel is painted.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Alex Ross, man, he's easily the best artist in the game right now, or ever, in my opinion.
Like you think that just picking up the books, the covers are that way, and it's not.
Well, didn't it take him like 4 years to make?
Yeah.
I mean, because we had talked about how all
Won
the little,
5 Eisner Awards, which is like prestigious.
I mean, we
you
had
know.
talked about how there were how there's cameos here and there, and some of those scenes there are so many characters. And the thing about Alex Ross is a fan of the old school stuff. One of the things he said he would never do was actually draw Kyle Rayner because he didn't like him as a Green Lantern. He was always a Hal Jordan Allen Scott fan. And so he took a lot of stuff from those old ones. Like you'd mentioned Sandman, that's Wesley Dodds.
Yeah.
Like I was saying about Starman and Hourman, Sandman, that version of Sandman is from the old JSA. And they just throw in Wesley Dodds. And if you read it, you're like, who's this guy? He's a Sandman. But that's, you know, for someone like me who's kind of an encyclopedia of this stuff, it's like, oh, it's Wesley Dodds. That's awesome. But then they have other stuff like when they're at the prison that they're throwing them all in, the Gulag.
Yeah, the Gulag.
It looks like the old Legion of Doom from the old Super Friends
like the
cartoon.
floating skull.
Yeah. And they're all throwing them in there. And they do a scene where you see like some of the people in the Gulag. And you see, like, you're just looking around at the characters, like, oh, yeah, here's some of those, like, new heroes or whatever, a couple villains. Yeah, like, 3 of them, and they got, like, 3 characters from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And they're just, like, hanging out. And if you're not, like, I mean, that's the thing. You look at each page, and it's just like, oh, that's something cool I didn't know about. Years ago, they came out with Wizard. Now, you remember what Wizard was. It was like this old magazine that was like an old comic book magazine / price
I have that
guide.
too. I actually have the issue where they first showed the Joker, the Heath Ledger Joker. I have that saved because it's
And
like that could
The issue was all about Kingdom Come. And it went page by page and like who was in, like, okay, this is that person, this is that
like
person.
the Easter eggs.
Yeah,
type
and
thing.
I remember like looking through it, and there were so much. I mean, you see like all the Easter eggs that came out with DC, like Batman versus Superman. So there was a decent amount of Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Same with Daredevil. There was a decent amount. This was like a whole magazine dedicated to everyone. Like, this is book 1's Easter egg, you know. And there's just so much little detail put.
That
in
was
every
the only
page.
way that we can come upon our comic book like our future knowledge about what was coming out back in the day, because we didn't have the internet.
Nope.
You know, we didn't have CBR, and we didn't have all these awesome sites, Newsarama and stuff like that. And Heroes Edge podcast to teach us about things we didn't know.
It was like,
you know?
who's gonna go to prom? I'm gonna sit at home and watch Star Trek: The Next Generation and read this.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, at that time, I mean, you did have some stuff on the internet because, I mean, Wizard was out in like 2000s, but
Oh, this is before the internet.
Yeah.
I remember, like I just said, I had that issue of the
That
Dark
issue,
Knight.
yes. I'm talking about the ones that we're talking
Oh,
about.
yeah. Well, I'm not talking about the beginning of. I'm saying at some point you did have Wizard and the internet at
Yeah.
the same time, and it was always better to still go to Wizard because it was more credible than the shit you find online.
Yeah.
I think Wizard started in like 1991, 92.
The year I was
Yeah.
born, 91. Same year T2 came out,
And it
Terminator
was-
2.
Honestly, I think it went like to 2004, 2005.
I think it went a little longer than that.
But it was back in the day, it was like, man, it was thick. It was a credible price guide and information magazine. And then eventually it turned into like a skinny little
Yeah.
like Maximum barely magazine. Like,
Maximum.
You know what I mean? It barely exists.
Yeah, you're on that one.
You know, so
Yeah,
whatever you want to say.
So that one was
Maximum
all about
Club.
Kingdom Come, right? right. Yeah, Kingdom Come was basically. I think we were trying to say is that Kingdom Come was that great
It was.
that it had its own magazine dedicated to it.
Yeah.
And it's,
I mean, I remember
huge.
buying because I mean, I'm sure you read the graphic novel that actually has the extra stuff in it.
That's the one I read.
I bought
the one
the
I have, I think.
each individual issue. Like, it was 4 issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the
And
same
I
thing.
remember picking them up at Comic Quest way back in the day. The first comic book store that I like nested at. But I remember going there and picking up all 4 and going over to a buddy of ours' house, sitting there watching an anime, which I think was Macross Plus, reading like this just amazing. I mean, that was the first time. No, the first time I was exposed to Alex Ross, it was Marvels.
Yeah, I remember
know
that
if you
with the
remember
Human
Marvel.
Torch
Yeah.
and with like Green Goblin and
the
Spider
Angel
Man.
cover where he's like holding like the little mutant child who's like being
Right.
attacked by like a mob. But like I remember seeing those, I'm like, wow, those look really cool. And then I saw this and I was like, wow, that's like that Green Lantern, like the Green Lantern in like full plate armor with like the giant green sword and or Superman or Batman in his armored suit.
Like even I remember picking up Kingdom Come, and I had known that like my grandmother was a fan of Superman. Actually, her mother, I have an early 1950s shot of her like by a comic book rack, like reading Superman comics.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so she's like a really big Superman fan, and I'm like, hey grandma, like check out this, like, and she's like, oh yeah, that's the way like Superman used to look. And Alex Ross has that, even though he paints Superman, it's depicted more as the 1930s Superman, like the Bowling with Planet Superman, where it's significant. Like even looking at him, it reveres hope. You know
Yeah,
what I
for
mean?
sure.
And it just does that for you. And she's like, let me read that. And she ended up reading the entire story.
That's cool.
And for Christmas, I ended up buying her the hardcover bound, leather bound copy of it.
That's awesome.
Since then, she had passed away. So I got that copy back from her. And not this year, but last year at C2E2, I went up to Mark Wade and I had him sign, dedicated to like my grandmother, and sign it, saying like, hey, what's up? I'm glad you love my stuff, to sign it to her.
Wow.
So I want to get Alex Ross to sign it too, but yeah, that's like halfway done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's a
Great story.
It's a great, awesome leather-bound copy though. Can't wait to get it done complete.
Yeah, going back to the book though, one of my favorite, speaking along the lines of the art though, my favorite images is the way he draws Captain Marvel, Shazam, once he actually does it towards the end, and you see the red and like the cape, the statue jaw, because he's also a part of this Mankind Liberation Front, not under the best circumstances, but he's considered the most powerful mortal.
Yeah, the mightiest mortal. And he's probably one of the few who could give Superman a run for his money.
Yeah.
Because all of his abilities are magic. And I mean, they even kind of bring it up in there that Superman has sucked in so much yellow sun energy that they don't even think kryptonite would bug him anymore.
Yeah. Luther says he's like, I found that out firsthand. Like,
Yeah. So you gotta fight fire with fire. The guy's got magic. There you go. And that is a crazy fight.
It is too. The the amount of Shazams that he gets hit with, it's like, whoa, Shazam. But,
Like, because you think of the guy, it's like that. It's like, yeah, he's kind of really Shazam. That's your thing. But when he's like, got a hold of Superman and he calls down the thunder, just like Shazam, and the thunder nails him, and Superman's got blood coming out of his ears and his nose.
Yeah,
that was
like
intense.
it's just a crazy scene.
And then, without spoiling anything too big, a great sacrifice is made, and it bridges that gap between trust again to kind of come full circle. And one of my favorite parts is the epilogue where they go to the superhero themed diner.
Oh, yeah.
And
that was awesome.
Yeah, it's
it was
Superman.
the
one,
Planet Krypton.
Yeah,
it's kind of like Planet Hollywood.
Yep.
Our favorite character, Booster Gold.
Yes,
he's running.
Booster Gold owns it.
No,
Booster Gold owns it.
Then he is not. That was an awesome diner. I give him points on that.
Don't even get me started on how cool Booster Gold actually is.
Yeah, we'll have a day for that.
But yeah, just to wrap up with the epilogue, it's so great because you got Superman and Wonder Woman who invite Bruce, out to get some dinner, and he's just, so you're pregnant, huh?
Yeah.
And they're like, what? Oh, come on. He's like, well, I knew. Come on, I'm Batman.
Yeah.
Basically, within so many words.
Yeah.
And
casual
then
conversation.
they ask him to be the Godfather because what better honor, is their closeness, but only that, immortal to teach them the ways of the people of Earth, that they can't, because you got a god and Wonder Woman and then a Kryptonian like demigod and Superman. So it's like, who better to be your kids like, like Godfather.
Nice. Yeah, Kingdom Come was awesome.
Interesting segue into like their kid. There was this sequel, The Kingdom. I don't know if you ever read it.
Yep, I read it. I was a little more disappointed.
Yeah. Did you read The Kingdom?
No.
I read the offshoots.
Yeah.
I remember asking you if it was good, and you're like, no, you just need Kingdom Come.
They should have kept it at Kingdom Come and just, that's it.
The thing that was interesting about it, though, is who the child actually becomes. And for DC, granted, in the New 52, they made him Judas Iscariot. But in the old, like before the 52, they made him the Phantom Stranger. Mm-hmm. Who's like, if you don't know who he is, he's just kind of this guy who'll just show up, and he's always wearing a black like trench, and he's got his black fedora and white hair. And he'll show up and he'll be like, hey, this stuff's going to happen maybe. You might want to do something about it. Or not. Your thing. And then kind of disappear. He never outright intervenes.
Mm-hmm. So he becomes like Alec Guinness.
And then but it's cool that this character would always show up like when pivotal stuff's about to happen and kind of warn everybody ominously and then take off. And then they kind of reveal, oh yeah, by the way, that's Superman and Wonder Woman's kid from Kingdom Come universe. I thought that was the coolest.
They made a weird child.
Go to Dagobah, Luke. Go to Dagobah.
Yeah, right.
But I've been following the third installment of the Dark Knight trilogy, that's been coming out recently, and their kid is actually a female who's been raised on Themyscira.
Okay.
And she's found basically that like bottle of Kryptonians.
Mm-hmm.
That's and basically broke it open, and now her and the like 16 of them are going to take over the Earth. Mm. Green Lantern showed up, and there was like these three like witchy Kryptonians, these three chicks that were kind of like a hive, and they were like, oh, you're a god, right? You're Green Lantern, you have this light, oh, that's so cool, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, like you guys need to stop, like I'm subduing you, I'm taking you. And they're like, well, first you have to catch us. And one goes to take off, and as soon as he goes to put his hand out for the ring, another one like eye lasers his hand off. And it's just like, and what's cool about it is not that was cool, but they're little books inside the actual book. So you get the whole spectrum of what's going on in the main story of the Dark Knight 3, and then you get like what's going on with the Atom was the first one, and then you get the Green Lantern. So it's kind of neat.
All right, so that segues us into honorable mentions, right? Wait, I didn't do mine yet. I got to do one, don't I?
We don't have enough time for that.
Oh. Convergence. One word, that's all I got to say.
That's why you don't get one.
That's why I don't get one.
Come to Free Comic Book Day, we can give conversions for nothing.
I'm giving full sets for free.
You do any New 52 DC event book, Forever Evil was the shit. That was really good. Crime Syndicate from Earth 3, evil version of the Justice League, kidnaps Justice League, gets all the villains to do all their dirty work. That's a synopsis.
10 seconds, go. All right, 10 seconds. What's your honorable mention here?
Flashpoint Paradox. Yeah, that's it. Basically creates the New 52, where Reverse Flash comes back, screws up a bunch of shit, and transforms the future. And Barry has to get his Flash powers back with Thomas Wayne Batman, and they turn our world into the New 52.
That's why Reverse Flash made number 4 on our list. Darren, 10 seconds.
Final Crisis, or not Final Crisis, that one sucked. Infinite Crisis. Started with the death of a somewhat sea-level hero, and ended up having basically all the villains come together in kind of a union, run by Lex Luthor, who ended up being Alexander Luthor. And yeah, it's kind of a complicated thing. Since I don't only have 10 seconds, I'm not going to get into it all, but it was really good.
All right. Well, we know that
It made like Superboy Prime, like one of the fiercest villains in
Yep.
DC Universe history.
Superman from Earth 1?
Yeah.
Earth 2? Or was it?
I think it was
one?
Earth 2.
The one from the original Superman, the one who eventually got to the point where he could bowl with planets. He showed up and
Wait, so literally set him up and...
yes.
Oh, yeah, man.
Man, I got to get more into DCU. It's insane. Yeah, I'd like to give an honorable mention to Crisis on Infinite Earths because that was supposed to be what I was supposed to talk about today. But I got through like 1 through 7 and realized I had no idea at all about most of these people. I'm like, that's a hard one to pick up for a guy that doesn't really read
You got
old
pretty
DC.
far considering like everything that, was involved with that series.
Well, I saw the death of Flash,
Yeah, Barry Allen died.
Yeah, I saw, was it, who else died?
Spoiler
The woman.
Supergirl.
Supergirl died.
Well,
I saw that.
Came out in like 80.
85.
85, okay.
It's older than I am. And it was I had actually had a copy in really good condition. Sweet. So that's it for our Back Issues DC podcast. And as usual, picks for next week. Darren, go.
Uncanny X-Men number 6. The Apocalypse War.
Oh, yeah. Apocalypse War,
Especially
actually.
after last week's issue. With
Yeah, it's starting to get really good.
Magneto going crazy and just showing what a badass he is.
He's also showing a lot of weakness, too.
Yeah.
He gets so tired. I mean, he'll blast
old.
people. Yeah.
I mean,
he'll
look
blast
at him.
people. Yeah.
He's
Did you-
old.
in the last issue, he's like, "Oh look, I'm getting weak."
And then,
Oh, I faked you out. I'm awesome.
I don't think he faked out. I think he just pulled it together and really just nailed it. Yeah.
Well, the big thing is
He had a cramp on that one.
Destroy Island.
No,
Oh, yeah.
Genosha.
Genosha, my
Genosha,
bad.
yeah.
That was pretty huge.
That was intense.
that was, yeah.
That was his island.
it was
That
explosive.
Magneto's the man. He's taking care of everything.
And
Dark
he went
Riders,
back to
good night.
Savage Land. He's like, I'm going to go back to my town in Savage Land that nobody's seen since like Jim Lee used to draw the book in like 1992.
Yep.
Yeah, I got a
was
really
awesome.
nice Rogue Savage Land cosplay at C2E2 this year.
Did you take a picture?
Yeah, Andy, throw that one up for us.
Oh, I thought you meant like you cosplayed as Savage Land.
Not that I could pull that one off.
Oh, baby.
The top end for it, anyway.
All right, Danny, what's your pick for next week?
Old Man Logan, number 4. He teams up with Old Man Cap in this one.
Steve
We'll see
Rogers.
2 like old men on porches, like chewing straw and telling youngins to get out of their front yard. Hopefully,
Drinking their
Sipping on the
medicinal.
whiskey.
yeah, that's my pick this week. I don't know how it's gonna go, but that's what I expect.
There you go.
I'm going to go with Power Rangers number 2. Rita Repulse is always up to no good.
Yeah.
Just
Classic.
Trifling.
Classic stories.
Got the Green Ranger being awesome, as always.
Yes.
The art in that book is really good.
It is. It's fun. It's a
I hear
fun book.
Scorpino fights in that one.
Yeah, she's one of the main characters, actually. And of course, you can't forget Golda.
Yes, Golda. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Danny. That book surprised me on its artwork.
It's really good. And those like first like printings of those 0 issues are all like worth money now.
Oh yeah, for sure. Good stuff. All right, my pick is what was I gonna go with? Empress by Brian Michael Bendis and Maleev. I forgot Maleev's first name. But they wrote International Iron Man together. Incredible book because Tony Stark's the man. We all know that. But yeah, they're also doing Empress, which is I forgot what it's about. I just know it's gonna be awesome.
Talk about it next week on the Marvel Back Issues podcast.
If we want to. Well, it's not really a back issue because it's number 1.
Well, if it's come out already, isn't it technically a back issue?
It would be a new release by then, though.
It doesn't become a back issue until it's off the shelf
Yeah.
and put into.
Well,
You got to give it at least 6
Probably
weeks.
not good enough anyway, Augusto.
Oh, don't go there. It's actually not by. It's actually by Marvel's offshoot publisher, Icon. Sweet. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. It was a long one. We did a lot of back issues, a lot of history collecting, but hopefully it was a lot of fun.
It's confusing, but take our words for it. Read that stuff we mentioned, and
Yeah,
you'll have a hell of a read.
yeah. If anything, just take that away with us. And we'll see you next week. We're gonna do the same thing with Marvel next week. So expect to hear some great ones. I know I will. I'll be picking out a good one. But have a good one.